Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Quantum Healthy Podcast. We have Mahwish Syed here today. Now, Mahwish was on our podcast a couple of weeks ago where she shared her cancer story and how she survived cancer. And we talked a lot about her book, Purgatory to Paradise. And today we are talking all about her specialty, which is interior design. She is also certified in applied quantum biology. Now, I want to just also preface this with she's a big deal. Okay, so she's been featured in the New York Times, Architectural Digest, Elle Decor, Hampton's Cottages and Gardens, and we are going to be talking to her today all about what she assesses in the home, everything from quantum biology to the nervous system to toxins, all the things. So, yeah, we will start there. And Mahwish, I would like you to kind of give us some background as far as your interior design background and fashion design as well.
Yes, thanks so much, Andeea and Laura. So happy to be with you both. Gosh, I have been designing beauty my entire life, and I think it began in Pakistan on the cool veranda floor of my nnEMFs garden next to the jasmine and blooming roses, where I would play with the scraps of brocade and silks. And my grandma handed me a needle. You know that story of Sleeping Beauty who pricks herself by the spindle? Well, I have a true story about that. I had my finger totally impaled on my grandma's Singer rotary old school wrought iron sewing machine that I was using when I was 4 years old. So I got that bug early, and it actually, instead of keeping me away from sewing, it made me even more invested. And I've been sewing things, creating clothing my whole life, and dealing with anything to do with decor and beauty. So it has been a very intuitive process for me. And I also learned the ancient techniques of dyeing, of being able to spin things, threshing flax, spinning wool, learning how to knit, how to crochet, how to embroider, how to create clothing without any patterns, to be able to kind of do an origami style clothing or to drape directly on your body. Very, very old school techniques that were passed down from generation to generation. So I want to root that in today's talk, because I think as I speak about it, I realize how unusual that is, to be given that, to learn how to dye things from onion skins and tea, or burning newspapers and using that to dye things, the ashes from. So it really translates into all of my designs, the ancient traditions, which are actually, as we know, quantum traditions as well, which is kind of a perfect
Yeah.
segue into the science portion of our talk today. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Awesome. So, okay. So first we want to talk about just a nurturing home, and why do we need our home to be a nurturing environment? This is probably a answer is pretty obvious, but yeah, what do you look at from that aspect?
so I have to root this into my own story, which is, yeah, I create beautiful environments, but I realized after going through cancer, when I really started to investigate the reasons why, and this is important to state, that most cancers are epigenetic, which means that almost 90% of them now, they're saying, is the result of your lifestyle and environment, which means that your home is your number one place where you are literally being marinated in the air and the materials that you surround yourself with. And that's why it's so important for it to be truly nurturing, not just on a mood level, but even on a physical, physiological health level, right? There's been such a big movement in wellness and creating a healthy home. But one thing that I think is so unique to my story is I audit the materials. I'm already auditing materials, and I'm a materials consultant. But looking at it through the cancer lens, I realized that certain things that are considered environmentally friendly are actually toxic for you, right? And we can parse out what that looks like, because it's marketed as, oh, it's good for you, or good for the environment, but it's really highly toxic, right?
Let's go there. What are some of those things?
Yeah, okay. Bamboo silk, like something that is, some things that is vegan, like vegan is a hot word, like vegan leather, which is PVC, and that's incredibly toxic. It off gases for forever. It doesn't decompose. It's around it. We are polluting our environment in that way, in this idea of like animals being bad for you, or animal products being bad for you, or leather being bad for you, is actually a fallacy. Leather wears better than PVC ever could. And it translates into fast fashion. It translates into disposable furniture. And it constantly, we're polluting our environment, but more importantly, we're polluting our home with this toxic material. And the reason why I am a big proponent of better materials and sustainable materials and natural materials is because 90% of our lives are spent inside, whereas before, in ancient times, that was the inverse. It was 10% on the inside and 90% on the outside, right? So now we're spending 90% of our lives inside in what I called a closed sarcophagus. And the reason why our home is a sarcophagus is because there's very little air ventilation and circulation in our homes. And the way that building materials are made these days, they're impermeable. They're not permeable materials as they used to be, which causes mold toxicity. It's because of the building materials, the actual materials the building is made out of versus what it used to be, right? So there's that aspect of it. And that lack of circulation heightens the concentration of toxins that you're breathing, not just in terms of volatile organic compounds, but also in terms of nanoparticles of the dust of your synthetic carpet. Your area rug, your carpeting, your flooring is the #1 source of your indoor air pollution. Okay.
Wow.
So you have to really think about and be intentional about reading labels these days, because a lot of these labels, you guys, are very, very easy to, it's like double speak. Like, for example, bamboo silk is viscose. Viscose is a very toxic substance. They call it and they market it as, derived from, it's greenwashed, actually. It's a cellulose product, but the way in which they derive that cellulose pollutes our rivers, pollutes our water table. It actually causes cancer with the people who are working with those solvents and chemicals in order to extrude the cellulose. And the byproduct is bad, the process is bad, and then the result is actually toxic for you. So speaking of anything that's bamboo silk, like your sheets, which your body is against for, 9 hours or 8 hours at night, is terrible. And I think it's immoral to market something as being healthy for you when it actually isn't. It's really, there's so much lack of ethics in our quest for profitability that we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. And like, I'm sorry, why do we call where we house our bed sheets a linen closet?
Right.
It was called a linen closet for a reason, because that's where we put our linens, because most of our bed sheets were made out of linen.
100% linen.
Yes, 100. Yes, thank you. Emphasis, 100% linen. Why? It wears better. It's better for our electrical body. It keeps our charge. It keeps us in alignment. And, there's so many benefits to these materials that we have used for thousands of years. And that's why I'm a big proponent of, bringing those ancient traditions into the modern fore, because a lot of this has been forgotten. And you've got someone here. I worked at the Metropolitan Museum of Art right out of college. I was one of the few. I had a Mellon Fellowship in textile conservation. I got to work on like 2,000-year-old Egyptian linen. Such incredible things, like hands-on, so great. And then I stayed on, and it's funny because the Met, they have a special section of the museum for that time that it was created. It was to house the textiles from all 18 curatorial departments under one roof, where their needs were being met in terms of humidity and, temperature control and support systems and all that. And at that time, that was amazing because it really brought, and this is Andeea, this is the connection, like craft, this idea of craft versus high art. So now finally there is more of a platform that recognizes textile arts as a real fine art versus as a craft, right? And to be able to be given the funds to hold it with and cherish it. I was just at the exhibit the other week of Sleeping Beauties. I don't know if you guys know about that, but this idea of these gorgeous, throughout time, like 16th century, 15th century, so on, like beautiful clothes that are laid out and through the lens of what dyes did they use? What was the techniques that they used? Some of them had, feathers on them. Some of them had, quills on them, like just whatever we used to adorn these dresses was just so exquisite. So yeah, I have a big passion for history. I have a big passion for health. And I think right now is a perfect moment for us to investigate and be curious about our homes and what we can do to create a beautiful home, but that's also a home that's healthy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I have a couple things.
I'll
So,
follow you after.
okay, so yes, thinking about how things are processed, just like how we have processed food, our clothing is being processed, which takes away the charge and makes it positive. And I've been seeing, I had to recently shop for a dress for a gala. Now, I normally am not a person who would attend a gala, but I am attending one. And I noticed, I was looking at all the labels. What is this made out of, right? And I kept seeing in red. So a label, typically it's white and then it's got the black. And it in red letters, it said, keep away from fire. Tons of clothing. Keep away from fire. Keep away from fire. And I was like, okay, so if you're seeing that on a label, one needs to go there in their mind, like, if I need to keep this away from fire, it means it's flammable. If it's flammable, what's inside that material that's making it such? Also with the dyes, yes, this is why I love vintage. Not only if it was, a lot of times it's already off-gassed, if it did have a lot of chemicals in it. I can't remember the exact year, and maybe Mahwish, but it's 18 something when the synthetic dyes were created. So therefore, buying anything before that, you're safe to know that it was dyed with plants. In fact, I'm wearing something that was dyed with cochineal and over dyed with indigo, and it's just our clothing does carry a frequency in it, and it's important. And with everything that's out there, like the trying to keep up with the trends and the fast fashion, like it used to be, seasonally, and now it's 52 seasons a year, and they're marketing it in this way. And I love that you touched on the bamboo silk thing. And there are other fabrics like it's lyocell is another one.
Pencil, lyocell.
Pencil,
Yeah, it's
lyocell,
all
yeah,
viscose space.
that
Anything
are
that's textile is that they're like, who comes up with these words? I mean, it's like the same, they're the same ones that come up with these crazy drug names too. But that's an aside. I really truly think that we need to get back to basics. So for your audience, I think it's important to stick to what do we use, right?
yes.
Linen, very good, 100% linen, but don't mix it with wool because they cancel their charges out, as you know.
Right.
Right. Wool is great. I prefer wool, 100% wool for your area rugs. Okay. Also pay attention to the backing of your rugs. I prefer unbacked rugs, which means that you need to put, some other material underneath it. Wool is 100% wool. Silk is great. Jute is wonderful. Linen is wonderful. And then also in terms of organic cotton is always better than a bleached cotton, right? That's something to note. And thread count is, another marketing strategy when it comes to bed sheets, by the way. The higher the thread count doesn't mean it's better. They all came together and decided that they were going to market like a higher thread count to be able to sell you just a more expensive tablecloth, which I call like higher thread count. You don't need 500. I prefer 300 or less for softness. And the other thing to mention as well in terms of materials in your home, the number one source of pollution in our oceans is actually paint, because we are sold that, most acrylic based paints are plastic based. They're a petroleum based product. Okay. And I have wonderful, for your audience too, I have a special code. I am partnering with a fabulous paint company that uses crystals, minerals, rocks, and it's cradle to cradle certified. And again, I have wonderful resources and audit lists on my website, Claim Your Paradise. And I'm telling you, this has become such a life's mission for me to vet materials and to vet spaces. And there are simple fixes. They're actually simple fixes. Like, for example, opening your window. Just open your window, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people don't realize that air circulation is really important. The other really simple hack is vacuuming. Do you know why? Because you're inhaling that synthetic dust from your furnishings in the nanoparticles, right? So by vacuuming, you're taking that dust out. So air filtration is another one. I think the best way to filter your air other than a machine they've been doing it for millions of years, long before we've been here on this planet, are plants. Plants are fabulous air filtration powerhouses. And I have a list of plants that are not only, part of the NASA's top 20, but are also pet friendly for any of us who have got cats and dogs, because I often test everything out in my own home and I never recommend anything I haven't tried.
I love that rule. Okay, before you said open a window. Can you talk to our audience why it's so important to open a window, not just for air filtration, but also because I wanted to talk to you about quartz glass windows and if that's something you encourage people to have a more quantum home and how expensive that can be?
Okay, so most of the time, if you're moving into, a home that you didn't have any control over their windows, what's
Mm-hmm.
happening now in our industry is most windows come laminated to block part of the UV to help cut down on energy, basically to be energy, they call it energy efficient. So to cut down on heating and cooling costs,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that lamination blocks a very vital part of the sun spectrum that we need as circadian and photosynthesizing beings, right? When you are opening your window, you're not only, yes, you're giving, air circulation into your space, but since sunlight's not polarized, you're able to get the benefit of the sunlight bouncing off the surfaces. And as a designer, I have two really easy suggestions to help you bring light into your home. And I did this actually I have three suggestions. One is to use high gloss paint either on your ceiling or on your windowsill to have that reflectivity into your space. So sometimes for low ceiling spaces, I use high gloss on the ceiling and it literally lifts up and mirrors the windows and gives you that feeling of elevation and height in a space from a decorative standpoint. But it also has the added benefit of bringing and bouncing that sunlight into and around your space. So that's one. The other are mirrors. And I love using mirrors to, again, reflect a view So for example, if you're on Central Park and you want to expand that, I would put mirrors perpendicular to the window and set so it literally feels like it's expanding. But what that also does is bring in the light and reflect that light back into the space, which I think is really, really important to do. And I also think that when it comes to lighting, where you place your furniture, a lot of people tend to want to not face their view or to have their back to the view. The more, think about your placement of your furniture in relationship to the window. And I would always prefer to be facing that light than to have my back to that light. So where you place your furniture plan is really, really important. And of course, if you can afford it, I'd love to get skylights in there, find a way to bring in as much natural daylight into your space as possible.
Awesome. Laura, I want to make sure you had comments.
I do. I have a few and taking amazing notes here. So first of all, Mahwish, I have to tie into our last interview. Please, listeners, go back a few weeks and listen to that interview we had, which was more about Mahwish's cancer journey. And it was so timely for me. I was fresh out of a bad break, tibial plateau break in my knee the day before. So I was barely hanging on. And Andeea really carried the interview. I was off of morphine and on different drugs and whatnot. But it was so timely for me because of all your words, Mahwish. And I have to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the inspiration. And from that, I downloaded your book and I literally have been listening to it and falling asleep to it every night. You narrate it, and it's been not just healing, but just inspiring in so many ways. So please, again, I would really encourage people to download the book on Audible that way, because you get the narration straight from you. And because of that, I looked around at this. So I'm in a new room. I'm stuck in our guest room now because I can't get upstairs to my own bedroom. And the guest room is where we put things as they go out the house, or things that we're getting rid of or we're going to sell. And I was literally, I mean, I took because of, the interview we had with you and looking at my space and wanting to, just this idea of, okay, I need to come up with a healing environment because I'm going to be spending a lot more time in this room. And I'm looking across at my son's The Walking Dead poster that he wanted to sell, and all kinds of junk and parts of my business that aren't active at the moment. And, it was dusty and, oh, just artwork that was not meant to be there. And so I can't say I've changed the world yet in 1 week, but I literally asked my husband to come in and say, okay, I need you to take this out and organize this. And so I'm going to bring some plants into the room, and you're just making me think about so many more things today. So I just wanted I had to say all of that. I love the idea of the sarcophagus when you mentioned that earlier. I've actually been to Egypt. I've been in the Great Pyramid in 1978. So that was something. And yeah, so just what did I want to say? Yeah, and just opening windows. I had to basically all the blinds I couldn't reach. So now everybody cleared it so I can actually go on my crutches and open all the blinds and get the natural light in. And I wanted to, when you're talking about the fabrics and clothing, I love this idea of a healing wardrobe. You two are both 100, way ahead of me on this. Andeea's been sharing things over the weeks with me. So thank you both for that inspiration. But I wanted to just share, I don't know if you guys are at the point I am at. I know Andeea isn't, but I'm in that menopause stage. And it's interesting how the body, it's this insight that the body doesn't lie now. I find at menopause, suddenly my body does not want to tolerate fake fabrics and synthetic fabrics. It wants cotton, linen. I haven't tried wool yet. I've always been a little itchy with wool, so we'll see how. I'm hoping I can do that, but I can't take things, any kind of synthetic sweater. I've had to literally give away. So I just want to share that with the audience too, with a healing wardrobe. And I also wanted to say thank you for talking about paint, because my son is a painter, so that's going to be interesting. And And yeah, there's something else I wanted to share, but I think that's the biggies. But we've talked quite a lot about the toxins, and I think we could probably do more. So I don't want to stop this part of the conversation, but a toxin that I'm, it's really first and foremost, and maybe I've been prioritizing more than others, is non-native electromagnetic frequencies, and that's where, coming into this quantum biology piece. I wanted to ask you, do you work like obviously I know you know a lot and are incorporating that. It came up initially when you talked about vacuuming because I'm a big vacuumer. I really like having the dust and the dog hair and all that. But I've been thinking about lately, like it does plug you into the power grid. And should I be sweeping more? Maybe that's more the ancient, would sweeping maybe be if you're going to do it every day instead of maybe vacuum once a week? And but that's just a thought that I had. But to ask you, but with the non-native EMFs, is there something that you prioritize as a needle mover in maybe creating a home or if you, are helping redesign a home that's already established?
Thank you. I honestly, first of all, I deal with a lot of smart home technology that I have to wean my clients from. The ability to turn their oven off from the driveway. I mean, like, I don't understand why your lamp or your toaster needs to be connected to your phone. Like, what is the point of that? So to be able to wean that off has been a challenge, but I have certain zones where if they do need to have that non-native Wi-Fi around, to have an oasis where if you can just not have it anywhere nearby, to be able to sleep in your cocoon where things are not plugged in, where you have the ability to have a vestibule or a place to, an appliance garage or something that is turned off and away from you as far as much as possible. That is a wonderful thing instead of, the usual like sleeping. My sister was the first one to start sleeping with her phone. She's a millennial, but it was the idea of like being able to put that phone away, like simple practices. And also, I think it's really important to be measured about this because it's one thing to just completely clear out. I'm a big believer in figuring out what I call creative constraints, right? To be able to create a way to have it, a way, because I can't tell them no. It's one of these things of how to manage that. And by the way, designing a space to help with the fabrics that, for example, if you want to keep their Lululemons and their aloe yoga pants and stuff, I just want to give you ladies a tip. If you can possibly do this. So did you know that closets that have doors on them will concentrate the VOCs, the PFAS coming out of your leggings, right? So if you are going to design a closet, if you're going to keep your yoga pants, for example, do not put them in a drawer. Hang them on a hanger with plenty of air circulation. Hopefully a closet that doesn't have a door on it. If it's a walk-in closet or some place away in another, like even take a rolling rack, put it in your guest bedroom where if you're going to keep your yoga pants, keep it in the room away from a place where you're constantly breathing. That is another way to deal with that. Create like a little boudoir, like create your own little dressing nook where you can house that material away from you, because it's been shown that a closet that's a closed closet system, it's going to concentrate those VOCs more than if it's an open system. Again, think of that air circulation and its proximity to where you're sleeping. So if you're going to keep those yoga pants, keep them somewhere else.
Oh, that is such a good tip. I've never heard anybody explain it in that way. I gave away thousands and thousands of dollars worth of Lululemon. I had over 20, I didn't realize it. I had over like 20 pairs of leggings alone, not to mention the tops and everything. It did take me time to actually be able to let go. So if you are listening to this podcast right now and you are like, in your mind, you were like, how could I even give away or sell or discard of my, Lululemon or whatever it is? you will get there. And there are alternatives that are 100% better. Like Laura, you were just saying how your body's rejecting those things at this point. There's a beautiful brand called Groceries. They use organic cotton and they plant dye their active wear. And I'll put a link in the show notes so people have that as a solution, because this active wear thing, it's a touchy subject because many of us are going around now, you doing your errands and all the things in this athleisure wear, or you're running from the gym to, like, I remember when I lived in New York, I went to Hunter College and I would go to school with my workout clothing on. And guess what I would change into to finish the school day? Because I'd go to the gym and then I'd go back to school. I'd put just another workout set on. I was living in it. And
Yeah.
it's even worse when we have the heat. And now you bring the closet thing. I'd never even thought like, I have a door on my closet, but it's always open, but it
Okay.
is right next to our bed. But I have also discarded I've hardly any
Right.
synthetic clothing left. So it doesn't, it's not a big of a deal. But for somebody who has a closet full of it, it does take time. I've been changing my wardrobe for 6 years. It's still not complete.
Look, that first of all, I admire your tenacity and your determination in really swapping this out. And I know that feeling of like letting go of something that, it's precious and it's hard-earned money and all of that. I totally relate. I just think that, it's hard for my clients. It's not, some of them are just like, no. So here, what can we do in this world? And a lot of people are like, oh, everything's toxic. And then they shut down. Like, I can't listen to this toxic talk because everything's toxic. And I just want to be able to live my life. And I get that. I think it's about creating protocols and creating strategies, creative constraints. That was an old blog title of when I had blogs many moons ago. It's defunct. But anyway, I still love that title, to create ways in which you can make compromises. You don't have to, throw it all out, but there's ways to deal with it. The other thing is to, as you mentioned, Andeea, is you wore it all day long. If you're really going to wear it for an hour, then take it off, and make sure you're not wearing it to sleep. Pick out those materials that are totally natural for when you're sleeping, when you're the most, in that and it's pressed up against your body. Like, figure out ways in which you're able to compromise that way.
I have a little tip for people. So I purchased linen sheets. I absolutely love my linen sheets. And I don't want to wear pajamas. I want the linen next to my body. I'm saving money now on pajamas.
Well, for those of us, who have to wear a pajama in case a kid walks in, I'm a big proponent of sleeping naked. I think that's like the best. That's fabulous. I love that you shared that. I'm having to compromise. There's a beautiful fabric. It's called lawn. And I grew up, it's the most thinnest, most tissue-like cotton you could possibly find.
The name of it?
Lawn.
Lawn.
Yeah, and I grew up with it in Pakistan, and it is like sublime. It is so thin and ethereal and gorgeous, and that's what we grew up sleeping in all the time. So,
Oh, I love it.
We'll
yeah,
have to get that in the show notes. Is it LON? Lawn?
it's LAWN, lawn.
Okay, that's what I wrote down. I want to put it in the show notes for sure.
Okay. I
Yeah.
can just share it at menopause at this stage that I'm at. I think I'm there, but I got surprised before that I wasn't there. You can wear less and less to sleep, ladies. That's all I can say. So I'm interested in both those. If they're tiny, PJs, but also those sheets. I might be going there soon. So I
Hey,
appreciate those tips.
of course, of course. And again, think about, not having doors on your closet or having it in another space. If you really want to house it, do not put it in a drawer and then hang it with some air circulation in there. And if your closet has a window, open that window so you can have that air circulation out to really air out your leggings.
Mahwish, going back to the man-made electromagnetic frequencies, just to tie that in, one tip, and then I'll ask you more about your needle movers. One tip that we learned yesterday, talking to the CEO of Shield Your Body, actually just in the research for that, it didn't come up in the interview, but he has a sleeping bag for your phone that you would put on your door for those people that absolutely have to have their phone somewhere close by. We like to leave it on another floor and shut off, and but I thought that was an interesting. He has an act just maybe for those millennials that are still sleeping with it under their pillow, which is a
My
nightmare.
son has that and been using it for the last 3 years.
Has he?
Yeah.
Oh, exciting. Oh, you even know about it. That's amazing.
So yeah, it's true. There's workarounds. There's workarounds
Yes.
for this 'cause
Yes.
we can't not have our cell phone. And I'm guilty of having it next to me more often than not. So the idea of living that kind of life where, there wasn't electricity. I mean, as much as I love burning candles and being able to use only candlelight as my source of evening light. Back to lighting, I think another important thing to realize, and this is something that I'm still searching. I'm not
Mhm.
satisfied with the selections that are in front of us. That LED technology isn't. It's still a very, very relatively new technology, and it's problematic. It's problematic on many different levels. And I don't know if you guys do this or if I mentioned it, but if you're going into a space or your own home, take your iPhone, your phone, put it in slow motion video mode and test out the flicker in any bulb, because the way LED technology is made to dim is still really bad for you. And the reason why is it turns off and on imperceptibly in order to create that dimming effect, which is sometimes we can't trace it with our eyes, but our body feels it. And so it's associated with epilepsy, it's associated with increased migraines and nausea and general anxiety. So your lighting can be contributing to your anxiety without you even realizing it. Okay. So in terms of that, I would recommend that you test it out. And if you need something dimmer, other than turning it off and using candles, I'm designing a collection of lampshades.
Nice.
So be able to create that gel effect. But if you don't want to buy my lampshade, you can use a scarf. So, again, since it's a cooler light, just test it out to be able to create that mood by just putting a scarf over your lamp to create that moody lighting and that ambient lighting without having to dim it down and causing that flicker effect.
And I don't know where this might just be something that's me, but I thought for some reason I thought to not ever put a scarf on a lamp because it could start fire. Is that just because of the
That was
light?
the incandescent or halogen was hot. It has,
Okay. So as long as this is a solution for people who have like a more modern light bulb in their lamp.
yeah, try, again, I'm not advocating to start fires, but like,
No, I know.
but in terms of that, if the lampshade and the bulb is at least like 6 inches, if the top of the shade and the top of the bulb is at least 6 inches apart,
Ah, okay.
right? Versus if the bulb is right here and the top of the shade is right here.
Yeah, okay. I'm following you. Because a
Right.
lot of people too that listen to this, I know a lot of people who are, they're learning about the different lighting they have incandescent bulbs. So that's why I wanted to mention it.
Mhm.
Oh, and I
Right.
want to mention the location of your light matters. Okay. So in terms of the quantum and circadian side of your home, if you think about the sun at high noon over your head, think about that lonely dome light fixture as your only source of lighting at 9 o'clock at night. It's actually fooling your body and thinking it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So not only do we need to think about where the sun is on the horizon at 6 or 7 o'clock, somewhere over here. So whether that means it's a table lamp, a standing lamp, or a sconce, the location of that light fixture to you matters, and even lower down would be good, in addition to the ambience of it, right? And or the lux factor. So that placement matters. I actually hate, it's a pet peeve of mine, I hate overhead light fixtures as the only source of light at night. I find it very jarring. Just like when you're in a bathroom and you're trying to put makeup on, and it's like you have all these shadows. It's like, I don't think it's very flattering. So you want to have that light at eye level or lower.
One of the
That's a
reasons
great
for
tip.
that, just so people can understand the science, is that we have in our melanopsin receptors that receive blue light, they actually live in the bottom half, apparently, of our eye, of the retina. And so if the light is above us, it will actually capture that. So if the light is below us, or maybe even at eye level, or but ideally you want it just slightly below, then it's not that it's going to the upper part of the retina. And so that's kind of the background on that.
Exactly. So we're ancient beings. We have been, our biology is attuned to the natural source of light, which is the sun, for thousands of years. Our biology has not changed since we've had electricity. Even though we've invented this great thing, we still are designed, our human design is very specific, right? Just like your elbow can only bend one way. We haven't figured out a way to bend it at 360 degrees for a reason. And therefore, exactly as you're saying, Laura, that when that light is above and it strikes those receptors, it gives your body a signal that it's a certain time of day. And that certain time of day is associated with a whole hormonal cascade that's happening. And right now, our modern life, the reason why our modern life is toxic in a lot of ways is because we're not respecting our biology right now. We're not
Well said.
respecting it. And we're
And
expecting ourselves to be functioning 24/7, and we're wondering why we're getting sick. It's not a surprise to me. And frankly, breast cancer and, junk light, toxic light at the wrong time, there's a correlation between that, because breast cancer is associated with our hormones, right? And if our hormones are being affected from that photoreceptor part, and by the way, we just don't only have photoreceptors in our eyes, but we have it all over our skin. So even if you do wear the blue blocking glasses at night, if you're bathing your chest in that toxic blue light, it's going to affect your hormones and therefore your health.
Mawish, just to add to that, I love that you mentioned the skin, because people don't think of that. But something that I've added is, because my house isn't quite there yet, I've got people on board still learning all this information, is if you're wearing blue blockers and let's say there is a light above you, consider wearing either a hat, and I've added just a visor, because I know the visor is protecting, so at least that light can't catch the bottom of my eyes. And it's so funny. I'm walking around with a visor in the evening, like a sun hat in my home, but
Because of the overhead light?
because of the overhead lights, because we still have some overhead lights
Oh, like
to catch that.
like a hi hat in the kitchen, or like recess lights?
Yes, yes. Yeah,
Got it.
I have some orange and red. I have a red light in my room upstairs, and but I have a couple orange lights with lampshades that are low wattage LED. So unfortunately, that's what's interesting. I haven't tried that test. I'll have to try that test with the camera. But what's nice is they are low wattage and they're very soothing to the nervous system. So I find when I put those on after sunset, I feel like, I know for me the effect, I just feel closer to bedtime. It helps to wind me down. Otherwise, if I keep these bright LEDs on, I just keep going. It's like I'm on caffeine
Oh my
until,
God. Yeah,
these lights go out.
completely. And thank you for sharing that. I think this is something that I'm actually working with lighting designers with, is to create solutions for us that can be retrofitted into those pre-existing hi-hats, to be able to create the right technology that will give you something that is not confusing your biology. I mean, this is a real problem in our quest. And the reason why LED is so prevalent is because it saves energy, right? It's saving the carbon footprint in that way, but it's also killing us. And there's got to be there's not enough dialogue, and people aren't realizing that something that is considered environmentally healthy, and this is what I said before, can actually be really terrible for you and terrible for your health. So this kind of very slick marketing strategy to sell you something because it's, you know, biosustainable or environmentally friendly, you have to pay attention to what's really happening behind that verbiage.
Yeah, and I just want to say too, you mentioned the term greenwashing earlier, and I was actually going to ask for you to kind of talk about that term, because I think that term, not everybody knows what it means. I remember the first time hearing it, I was like, what does that mean? And you just kind of shared just now. You
Yeah, so
shared a little bit about that.
thank you. There are various organizations that, you know, if you pay them a certain amount of money, they will greenwash your product for you. They will basically put their little stamp on, and it'll be, you know, considered by the consumer as being environmentally friendly. And, you know, depending on, and I'm not naming any names, it's really important to understand that whatever organization it is for you to investigate, what their standards actually are, right? Whether something is third party tested, who's saying that it is good. Just because they're saying that it's good, is it really good, right? And the greatest way for me to stay aligned with that, you know, speaking of like words like washable, stain resistant, all of these like convenient kind of adjectives that we use to sell a product, pay attention to those adjectives, okay? If it is usually stain resistant and washable, there's a synthetic something bad for you in there. That's really important for me to say, because all of these things like linen and wool, they're completely washable and they're completely stain resistant. They're just as stain resistant. Somehow we're associating stain resistance with these toxic materials versus, and by the way, I hate viscose in carpet because it's like the silk alternative. It's Tencel or Lyocell. Guys, it is water stain up the wazoo. If you spill even a drop of water on that carpet, you will see it. You will be able to wash a wool and a real silk carpet, and it'll turn out great. But trying to clean a viscose, oh my gosh, rayon, please. You wear it once, you put it in the wash, it shrinks, it looks like nothing like it used to. That sweater, Laura, like it doesn't even wear, it wears out, it kills. All that stuff is so terrible, not only for you, but for that environment, because it's polluting everything. And all of that seeps into our water table, it seeps into our soil. There are cascade issues with using these things that may cost you money, you know, in the short term, but will cost you your health in the long term.
Yeah, and they're finding, and you're speaking about microplastics as well in that. And we're all making about a credit card worth a week just with the things we're breathing in, and it is overwhelming to think about these things. And so there's that bioaccumulation happening in the body. And this is why it's so important to have this conversation today and really bring nature into the home. So important.
So number one, think about your flooring, your area rugs, your carpets. I highly recommend, if you were able to just remove that will remove that's a needle. It will move the needle in terms of a healthy home, is to replace that with something natural. Really, really important. Number two, bed sheets. Please don't use bamboo silk. Try to take away anything that has any polyester or any synthetic material that is against your skin, including what you're wearing when you're sleeping, if you're wearing it. That is another important thing. Where you place these materials that are toxic, like those Lululemons, it's really important, if you do have them, to not breathe them and not accumulate the concentration of those articles. So do not pull them into your drawers, keep them in another closet, maybe a guest closet, something like that. That's your Lululemon situation. So there's that. And lighting is really important in terms of its proximity to your body at night. I'm a big proponent of using natural fire, whether that's a candle, a non-paraffin candle, something that
Wax.
doesn't have synthetic fragrances as well. It's really important to incorporate that beautiful firelight, because firelight is the only other source of natural infrared light other than the sun. It's romantic. Think of your most romantic restaurant. It is dim and ambient for a reason, and it's got candles there for a reason. It puts you in the mood. And again, think about your bedroom as your sanctuary. That is something that I think, if you're going to start creating one space that's like your holy sanctuary, I would start with the bedroom, because it's contained and you're able to like do things there. Like, I don't believe in TV in the bedroom at all. I've never had TV in the bedroom. It's not a good idea. It's really, really not smart, especially why would you want to bathe yourself into that when you're wearing your beautiful organic cotton nightie, lawn nightie, and then you're watching TV? It's like you're killing the whole purpose of all of this. So start with your bedroom.
Oh, I love that. One of the things I want to say about synthetics. So I did a podcast, and that's how me and Mahwish connected. And one of the crazy things in this article that I had read was the synthetics are actually attracted to radon because it magnetizes radon. So when you're wearing synthetics, you're literally attracting really nasty things to your body as well. Not to mention they're a zero frequency, so you wouldn't want to wear them anyways. And a lot
Andeea,
of
can you
things are
explain the
blended
frequency?
too. What, Laura?
Sorry, can you just take a second to explain the frequency? We all know about it, but I think listeners will not know about the frequencies
Yeah.
with linen. I think that's helpful.
Are you asking Mawish or me?
Well, either of you.
Yeah, I have them memorized.
Go ahead, Andeea.
So the human body, if you're not ill, is going to have a frequency of about 100. So we always want to wear something that is at that level. So that would be a neutral. So if you're wearing like organic hemp or organic cotton, that's going to be at that neutral 100. So
That
it wouldn't
100
be
hertz as in frequency?
yep, as in frequency. Yep. And you wouldn't want to wear anything lower than that. So things that are lower, like Mawish mentioned earlier, bleach cotton, that's going to have a vibration of a 40. And also we want to think about dyes, things that are dyed with synthetic dyes, which most things are, is going to also likely lower that frequency. So, and it's going to be more toxic. So if you have something that is, let's say it's 50% cotton and 50% polyester, I don't know, they didn't measure these blends in the study, but one can gather that that's very likely going to be a 40 or lower, right? Because of that, because it's blended and because it's dyed, and things that are synthetic. So rayon, polyester, nylon, all of those are going to be a 0. And silk, because of the nature of which, and I love it, I'm a silk lover, people, so this kills me to say this, silk is a 10, and that's just because of the nature of the way silk is made. However, I would be very curious what piece silk would vibrate at, because piece silk is the worm dying, the worm dies, it does, but most silk is made, in these big places where they're being forced through the process in an unnatural way, so they're dying much sooner than they would in the natural process. And when it's the natural process, in fact, Cheryl Colander coined this term piece silk or ahimsa silk. And so I would wonder if that type of silk would have a higher frequency, but all to say it is natural. And when you were talking about the importance of the natural rugs and whatnot, I wanted to mention to people that putting your wool in the sun, so for one, it's naturally antibacterial, linen, wool, any of those things. And also you're going to be able to literally clean it with light. Can lay your sweater out in the lawn or on something, and it will clean. It will clean, it will be cleansed. If you're a knitter and you know how to block, so blocking is just gently soaking the sweaters if you are wearing wool. And also, not all wool is created equal. You know, we have the Icelandic wool that's waterproof. You're going to have itchy. And that's why people, I think, associate wool with itchy, right? And that is not all wool is like that. So if you have like merino wool or a blend like of an alpaca or something with it, you're going to have a very, very soft on your skin, and it's going to have all these beautiful properties. And the last thing I want to say about the frequency, and you mentioned it already, Mawish, was the wearing linen and wool together will cancel it out as zero. So wool and linen are very healing. We're talking jumping from a 100 to a 5,000. So when you ask, what is a healing wardrobe? It is absolutely linen. We want as much linen, and manufacturers want to save money. So you will find a lot of mixed things nowadays. You'll find 50% cotton, 50% linen. You really want to try to get 100% linen to have this benefit. And then now it's okay. So linen, I believe the energy frequency travels from right to left. And with wool, it travels from left to right. This is why it cancels each other out at zero. So just not wearing them together. I mean, typically linen's worn in the summer anyways, and wool is worn in the winter. So you're likely probably not going to wear these things together, but that those two things are very high frequency. And same as camel, goat, and alpaca. I think all those animal fibers were on the list as high. Now, the last
What
thing I
about
want to
leather?
say,
What about leather? Do you know anything about
I,
leather?
it didn't test that in the thing I read. However, with leather, I would strongly recommend people look for vegetable tanned. Wouldn't you agree, Mawish?
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
by the way, leather in terms of grounding, I prefer leather sole shoes to any other sole. The only second to leather would be wood because it allows you to ground your foot to the earth versus anything that's rubber or, any synthetic material. So I think of like the leather moccasins that we have made throughout millennia. Again, this is a great hack. Whatever your ancestors did, think about what your great grandparents wore. Think about what materials they used. They used copper pots for a reason. They used, leather shoes for a reason. They
Mhm.
used linen sheets for a reason. So there is actually this, I want to mention this overarching kind of invisible rhetoric where if it's modern, if it's new, it's somehow improved or better. And this is very important because what we're talking about is we're taking the best and the latest in terms of science and technology. But what I'm finding as I research all of that technology, it's rooted back into the ancient traditions. And this is why I'm a big believer in marrying the ancient wisdom with that modern, the best of the modern, right? And it's not so binary as, oh, if it's new, it must be better. If it's new and improved, right? And a lot of us who've been here on this earth, like I have for a while, realizes that the improvement ain't no improvement, that the old ways were often a lot better and a lot more aligned with our health. And so yes, there are great improvements, and there's ways in which science is finally explaining, like what you're talking about, Andeea, with the wool and the linen canceling each other out. That's in the Bible. That's in the Torah. That's in the ancient scriptures of many
Mhm.
traditions. There was no science that could measure that frequency for that in that time, but why did they actually want to put this down for other people to benefit from? So all of this in a lot of ways was an oral tradition that I grew up with, was passed down from generation to generation and memorized. And we trusted our elders in that way because it worked for them. They were healthy in a lot of ways. If you even look at the advent of cancer, and this again back to the cancer part, it is an epidemic. It's an epidemic that's only ramping up now even faster.
Yeah.
What's changed? So pay attention, step back for a little bit and realize that whatever you're being shown, be a critical thinker, be curious, investigate, and understand that whoever's trying to sell you something, what is their agenda? What are they not thinking of? What are they, pay attention to that, whether it's greenwashed or not. But back to your ancestors, back to how they used to do things. And by the way, textiles, I was a little, I'll tell you a story. I was a teen at the Met, and I was going through with the other interns, and I thought I was being so smart. I asked this really, sassy question, and I'll never forget the answer. And the person answering me still to this day says to me, she's never forgotten that answer either. So my question was this. I looked around and I'm like, how come there's all these clothing, these gorgeous clothes, and they're all for rich people? These are just like all the rich people clothing. Where is the poor person's clothing, right? Why isn't that around? Why aren't we seeing something for the proletariat? And her answer was really interesting. She's like, Mahwish, that stuff was worn, taken apart, worn again, taken apart, worn again, taken apart, worn again, until it was no more. This ability for us to take something and rewear it and to repurpose it, to continue making it good, to me is a testament for its durability and strength. Those materials, silk has greater tensile strength than steel, right? So it has this ability to be worn again and again and again. Those materials that we wore over time, over and over again, are these very materials that we're talking about, which, by the way, synthetics don't stand a chance. In some ways, in terms of that wearability, we're in a crisis of fast fashion, of creating an environmental toxic pollution of the highest level, because this clothing that's pushed out, worn once or twice or for a season and then tossed away, it's not being repurposed. It's not being reused. Okay. And speaking to that, please don't wear anything that's recycled bottles. Just so you know, if you think you're doing a good thing by wearing something that's a recycled plastic bottle, it's actually really toxic because the chemical's been degraded, and it's even more porous for it to infuse your skin with the bad stuff than to actually be, somehow you're being eco-conscious by wearing something that's recycled on your skin. It's only good if you're repurposing a natural fiber, whether that's a natural wool fiber or a natural cotton fiber. Do not wear recycled poly, nylon, plastic.
I mean, a general rule, just anything that's natural, right? Just natural fiber, you can't go wrong.
Right. And there have been cases with, those pajamas, especially amongst kids. Please, 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 when it comes to your children, do not put synthetic on them, please, especially at night. It's really important. There have been so many. I have a friend who's a children's nurse, and the horror things that she tells me about burns from the pajamas because of that mobility is a real factor. And that's something that it happens in a split second. So always make sure, especially with young ones, to wear as natural as possible.
Yeah, I'm glad you made that point. I wanted to mention the environmentalworkinggroup.org is a great resource for people if you're wondering, well, how would I know if this product's better than that product? And with the whole greenwashing thing, they do a lot of work, and they'll rate products, and you can also find on their website everything that's in your water, in your tap water. By putting in your zip code, they will let you know what toxins have been reported in your tap water. So I've given this resource out usually in regards to the tap water finder. However, they are a great resource if you are, we're all consumers of some things. And if you want to find, what products are rated better and less toxic for you and your family and your children, that would be a good resource. And I will put a link for it in the show notes. Mahwish, do you have any other resources, like as far as just to find healthy things?
Yeah, the Parsons Healthy Materials Lab is a really good resource. It's free and it has a wonderful library of looking at different materials and different labels in terms of your furnishings and housewares and things like that. To be able to look at that, I would highly recommend them.
Awesome. And you said that's Parsons Health Materials Lab?
Materials. Yeah, I'll give you the link.
Okay, perfect. And I will add that for people. Laura, do you have any questions for Mahwish before we ask her our signature question?
Yes. I keep going back to the non-native EMFs.
Yes.
Was just, have you, like, I know you know a lot and you look at homes differently than you probably did several years ago with all your knowledge of quantum biology now, but have you ever paired up with a building biologist with any clients and had that expertise brought in? I was just curious.
I actually just recently did an IG live with Brian Johnson.
Yes.
Yes, you
Know
did.
of Synergy 360. He's a dear friend. It would be, we're working on working together here in New York. It's something that is a dream for me to do. In terms of my current network, I'm one of the few people who's thinking about this, and the architects that I've worked with and the lighting consultants and all of that I'm working with, I ask them these questions and they're looking at me like,
I know we're not there yet.
I'm being very honest about that. And
Okay.
also, I don't know if I mentioned, I have a gift for your listeners. If you are interested in the 3 things that I recommend could really help kickstart a healthy home, go to claimyourparadise.com/podcast for my top 3 healing essentials.
Thank you for that. I will make sure I link that too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we have our signature question, which in our previous podcast with you, we asked. We want to put a little twist on it today. You've probably covered it, but it might just work as a nice summary. Is what would a quantum healthy home mean to you?
I can't remember what I asked, what I remember, what I said last time.
It was brilliant.
I keep going back to the ancient life. Go back to what your great grandmother did. Really think about what practices they had, what time they went to bed, what time they woke up, what materials they used, eating seasonally, wearing natural materials. But to really think about and not forget that your ancient roots. And each and every single one of us, I'm sure, has a family tradition that we can really explore. Or ask your mom, like ask your grandma, ask the matriarch or patriarch of your family for those things, because that is your treasure. And really, it's not just, those treasures are not just found on podcasts or in a book. They're sometimes right under your nose, and you just need to pick up the phone and ask.
I just have to maybe dedicate this episode. Try not to get emotional, but my mom passed away this day 3 years ago. So unfortunately, I don't have that anymore. But I have, cousins, and we'll have to and older brothers, and we'll all have to lean on each other to get those treasures. Yeah. So that was so beautiful.
Oh,
Ha have we captured your offerings?
oh, thank you.
Anything else? Yeah.
You can find me at claimyourparadise.com. You can also book a free consult with me if you want to work together. I have master classes on color and lighting and surfaces and materials. And I also have courses for doctors and for patients who are going through cancer treatment. But again, it's really about looking at your home from that lens of health, and that your home is your sacred sanctuary, and to always align your biology with your environment. And Laura, thank you so much for sharing that. And frankly, I'm so deeply honored and touched to know you, both of you ladies, and to continue conversing and sharing our knowledge and sharing our resources. It's really, truly a pleasure.
Beautiful.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you so much. Just to summarize a little bit, Thank you for your mission to help all your clients. But we can see, both of us, that this is so much bigger than just the clients that are able to hire you for their wardrobes and for their homes. But you're just encouraging everybody to question these modern practices, to be critical thinkers. So important. Even just today, you've inspired me to kind of catch up to Andeea a little bit, and yourself, on looking at my closet. All these extra things that are breathing that you don't realize are affecting your air pollution and air quality, and just fundamentally to, everybody to go back to ancient wisdom, to repurpose, and all these natural fibers, and it's all going to help our healing. And as mothers and leaders, I think this is so important for us to do and spread this message, just to the wider world. So thank you, Mahwish, for being you, and your book, and having to go everything you went through with your cancer journey to get to today, where you're having this massive impact on the world.
I'm truly humble. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, so much for listening, and we will see you next time.
Thank you so much for listening to the Quantum Healthy podcast. We hope you found some value in this information, and if you feel inspired, please share it and leave us a 5-star review. This will help us reach so many more people. If you want to connect with Laura, you can find her at laurakistmanwellness.com and Andeea at andeearay.com. Links are below in the show notes. Now, go find some sunlight and embrace your own quantum healthy.